John Goodman and Roseanne Barr once built America's most beloved TV family, the Connors. From the outside, it looked effortless. Laughter echoing through living rooms, a working-class couple who made struggle feel survivable. Yet behind the applause and bright studio lights, the truth was heavier. The success that bonded them would one day become the silence that broke them. When Roseanne first premiered in October 1988, more than 21 million people tuned in each week. The show was raw, funny, and real. A mirror held up to middle America. Goodman's warmth as Dan Connor balanced Barr's sharp wit, giving families something honest to hold on to in uncertain times. For nearly a decade, it defined an era where ordinary life finally felt seen. But 30 years later, after a record-breaking revival in 2018, that laughter suddenly stopped. A single tweet, one that Goodman himself never sent, erased it all overnight. Now, decades after Roseanne changed television forever, Goodman finally reflects on what truly ended it, not scandal alone, but the fragile cost of loyalty, love, and truth. When Roseanne premiered on ABC in October 1988, television itself seemed to shift. Until that night, family sitcoms sparkled with white picket perfection, kitchens without clutter, mothers without exhaustion, fathers who solved every problem in 22 minutes. Then came the Connors. Their wallpaper was faded, their couch sagged, and their laughter came from somewhere honest. It wasn't about escape, it was about recognition. Within weeks, more than 21 million Americans tuned in each week, not for fantasy but for reflection. John Goodman entered that world as Dan Connor, the kind of father viewers recognized but rarely saw portrayed. Casting directors had spotted him after his turn in Raising Arizona, 1987. He wasn't handsome in a Hollywood way, yet he carried warmth that filled the screen. Opposite Roseanne Barr's fearless sharpness, Goodman's steady heart created balance. Their timing was effortless, their banter electric. The audience believed them because they were them, a husband and wife facing everyday struggles, raising kids and holding on to love through it all. Those first seasons became a cultural event. The show didn't whisper about unemployment or credit card debt, it said the words out loud. It tackled weight, addiction, parenting, politics, subjects that sitcoms avoided. Critics called it revolutionary working-class television, but for the people making it, it felt like standing on a fault line between truth and entertainment. Barr's stand-up sensibility fueled the scripts. She pushed for realism no matter who it unsettled. Goodman stood in quiet awe of her strength, even when that strength came wrapped in storm. Off-camera, the two built a rhythm that mirrored the Connors' marriage, moments of affection, punctuated by creative tension. Roseanne was the storm, Goodman was the ground. But storms by nature change landscapes. By the fifth season, Barr had full executive control and began rewriting lines moments before taping. Some cast members thrived on the spontaneity, others felt unmoored. Goodman kept his focus on the work, believing the integrity of the family they portrayed would keep them united. What audiences never saw were the long nights, the table reads that turned into debates, the pressure of holding a #1 show together, while fame rewired every relationship around it. Barr's voice grew louder in writers' meetings, and the series slowly became her reflection. Goodman, ever loyal, supported her even when it meant setting aside his own doubts. The show's realism had become its weight. The closer it came to real life, the harder it was to separate performance from truth. Yet, amid the strain, magic persisted. When the cameras rolled, something transcendent happened. The laughter that erupted from the live audience wasn't canned or polite. It was recognition, empathy, relief. Families who felt invisible saw themselves on prime time struggling but surviving. For Goodman, that response mattered more than gossip or ratings. He felt responsibility to the crew, to Barr, to the people watching who believed in Dan Connor. The role was once described as a mirror that had to be held steady, even when it was shaking. As the series climbed to the top of Nielsen charts, the outside world pressed closer. Magazine covers, talk shows, award nights, they became part of the job. Fame magnified everything. Barr's boldness, Goodman's shyness, the network's expectations. Small creative disagreements, once harmless, began to echo louder under the studio lights. Still, the team pushed forward. They had built something authentic, and neither wanted to let it slip away. By 1997, Roseanne had run 9 seasons and earned multiple Emmy Awards. When it ended, it left a hole in television that no network could easily fill. Goodman walked away proud yet weary, unaware that the story wasn't finished. That 2 decades later, nostalgia would call him back to the same worn couch for one final chapter. Looking back, the beginning of Roseanne was more than a TV success. It was a social mirror framed in humor, but mirrors can crack under pressure. For John Goodman, those early years would become both a blessing and blueprint, a lesson in how truth on screen can reveal truths we aren't ready to face off it. The dream was born in laughter, yet beneath its early triumphs, a quiet tension waited in the wings, patient and unseen. When the cameras stopped rolling, exhaustion filled the silence. The world saw chemistry, the cast felt pressure. By the 5th season, the pace had quickened. The storylines grew heavier, and Roseanne Barr's influence over every creative decision had deepened. She wasn't just the star anymore. She was the architect of the universe they all inhabited. Goodman, steady as ever, watched the whirlwind gather. He had always seen Roseanne as the heartbeat of the show, but that heartbeat had begun to pound louder, demanding more space. Writers rewrote scenes minutes before filming. Producers hovered, networks interfered, and every episode carried the weight of expectation. Goodman did what he always did best. He showed up, grounded, patient, the calm amid creative storm. Still, the laughter that once came freely began to feel rehearsed. In interviews years later, Goodman would speak candidly about his personal battles during those years. Alcohol had become his escape from exhaustion. It was described as self-medication, a quiet way to silence the chaos when applause turned to pressure. In 2007, long after Roseanne had ended its original run, he entered rehab and confronted the habits that had shadowed his success. It was a confession without drama, spoken in the same soft tone that had always defined him. For Goodman, survival meant facing the truth privately, not publicly. Meanwhile, Barr's creative drive was changing everything around them. Some crew members thrived under her intensity, while others found it overwhelming. She fought for realism, for politics, for the kind of raw honesty television rarely allowed. The Connors were now not just a family, they were a statement, but every statement came at a cost. Goodman admired her conviction but carried the fatigue of someone trying to hold a fragile world together. On set, small moments told bigger truths. A forgotten line, a delayed cue, a sigh between takes. Each revealed the toll of years spent performing authenticity. On screen, they were simple people, but off-screen they bore the weight of a world that never stopped watching. The irony wasn't lost on Goodman. As Dan Connor, he offered comfort and steadiness. Off-screen, he was quietly unraveling, trying to live up to the same moral compass his character projected. Friends who visited the set remember his kindness, his quiet jokes, his way of easing tension without needing the spotlight. Barr, for all her fire, leaned on that steadiness. The partnership that held Roseanne together wasn't romantic, it was creative dependence. Yet dependence breeds fragility. When one side begins to wobble, the balance shifts. By the show's later seasons, fame had turned the set into both a home and a battlefield. The press crowned her a genius in one breath, and condemned her in the next. Goodman watched, unwilling to judge, unwilling to abandon. Loyalty had become both his anchor and his burden. He once said that the secret to staying grounded was keeping your head down and doing the work. But when the work itself begins to hurt, even humility can't shield the heart. Behind every recorded laugh track was a team learning how success can both bind and break. The laughter remained real, but so did the fatigue. Each season stretched their limits a little further, and though audiences saw warmth, those behind the camera felt the chill of burnout. Still, through it all, Goodman never stopped showing up. When asked years later why he stayed so long, he simply said, "Because it mattered." To him, Roseanne wasn't a job. It was a promise, to truth, to the working-class stories that deserved to be told, and to the people who needed to see themselves reflected on screen. What he didn't yet know was that history was preparing to repeat itself. Decades after the final episode aired, a new version of Roseanne would rise, and the same forces that once tested its heart would return, louder than ever. The rise had been glorious, the dream vibrant, but then the moment came when the lights slipped away. In May of 2018, the reboot of Roseanne was abruptly cancelled by ABC after a tweet that compared Valerie Jarrett to the Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes. For John Goodman, the man who had stood beside Barr as Dan Connor for decades, the shock was more personal than professional. The laughter stopped, the chairs were empty, the set fell silent, and he found himself adrift. Days after the cancellation of the show, Goodman felt as though he was under a plastic bag that is closing in on him while trying to remain calm during the storm. The show had concluded its original run nearly 20 years before, but the reboot's success, and then sudden collapse, reopened wounds he did not know were still raw. In one moment, the family he had helped build, the cast and crew he called home, became a project suspended, uncertain, fractured. On a public level, Goodman remained dignified, yet behind the restraint lay heartbreak. He had devoted years to a character, to a team, to a vision, and suddenly all of it felt suspended, like laughter echoing in an empty house. Part of the pain came from what the show had become in the public eye. The reboot had premiered to massive numbers, a huge cultural moment. But when Sawyer's lightning struck, the fallout was immediate. For Goodman, watching the character he loved, and the world he inhabited unplugged without warning, felt like losing a part of himself. The family that had been his anchor became a memory, and the success that once felt real now carried the weight of its loss. Behind the cameras, the cast and crew scattered. Jobs were disrupted. Roles were rewritten. On the show's spin-off, The Connors, the decision was made to continue without Barr, a shift that challenged what the original had represented. Goodman praised Barr's decision to relinquish her rights so that the show could go on, acknowledging her sacrifice for the jobs of many. The first episode without Barr was very weird for Goodman, as they had sat together laughing for years. This collapse forced a reckoning. Goodman looked inward, recognizing that the success he had once taken for granted could vanish in a flash. He felt the grief of what was lost, but also the reflection of what remained: friendships, memories, and the traces of his devotion. The TV father who made bills and breakdowns into humor now knew the cost behind the smiles. He faced the truth that dedication and vulnerability exist side by side, that loyalty sometimes comes with a price, and that endings can do more than close a chapter, they can reopen unseen wounds. Still, in the sadness he found a lesson. He began to see the collapse not just as failure, but as transformation. The job wasn't simply taken away, it changed shape. The laughter they had shared, the working-class stories they told, the relationship with an audience who believed them, those things didn't vanish, they shifted. And in that shift, Goodman embraced a new truth, that legacy is more than a continuing series, and character is more than public acclaim. In the ashes of the show's fall, Goodman's voice grew quieter, but his presence became clearer. He no longer just played a father. He became a witness to his own story, what it meant to build something beloved, what it cost to watch it undo, and how to live after. He carried the weight of the fallout with gravity, but also with the beginnings of wisdom. The show was gone, yes, but for him the echo remained. What ended was not just a TV show, but the illusion that laughter makes everything safe. And in that realization lay the first step towards something unexpected: understanding. After the sudden cancellation of Roseanne, John Goodman retreated from the public eye, but not from reflection. For weeks, he replayed every scene, every laugh, every argument behind the cameras. He had lost more than a television show. He had lost a rhythm, a family, and a world he had helped create. In interviews later, he admitted to feeling a profound sadness, describing it as a hole in the day where nothing could fill the space left by the sudden disappearance of the Connors. Goodman never shied from honesty. He acknowledged the pain caused by Roseanne Barr's tweet in 2018, the one that likened Valerie Jarrett to the Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes, prompting ABC to cancel the show. Yet he also spoke about forgiveness, emphasizing that understanding the human behind the mistake did not excuse it, but offered a path forward. He realized that someone he had worked with and admired could make a choice that hurt countless people, and yet life demanded moving forward without bitterness. During the weeks following the cancellation, Goodman reflected not just on Barr, but on his own choices, his silence, and the burdens he had carried for decades. He considered the years spent keeping peace on set, the loyalty he had shown to a creative partner, and the ways in which his own personal struggles, including his battles with alcohol, shaped the man who portrayed Dan Connor. Goodman entered rehab in 2007, confronting demons that had shadowed his career. That journey informed his perspective after the show's collapse, giving him the tools to speak honestly without blame, and to reflect deeply on human imperfection. In interviews, Goodman shared how watching the reboot dissolve so quickly was almost surreal. The show that had returned with unprecedented ratings, 18.4 million viewers for the first episode, vanished almost overnight. It was a reminder that even the most enduring work is vulnerable to forces beyond control, and that public acclaim can disappear in a single irreversible moment. He called it a lesson in humility, one that required acknowledging both the power and fragility of the life he had built on screen. Goodman also spoke about empathy and loyalty. He reflected on the courage it took for Barr to step aside so the Connors could continue without her. He praised her sacrifice, recognizing that her choice allowed dozens of jobs and the continuation of a beloved story. For him, forgiveness and reflection were inseparable from action. One could not exist without the other. "It's not enough to feel it," he said. "You have to live it, and sometimes that means letting go." Even now, Goodman described how the experience reshaped his understanding of connection. The Connors were never just a television family. They were a lens through which millions saw their own struggles, joys, and mistakes. Losing that platform was painful, yet it revealed something enduring: the value of truth, of loyalty, and of carrying your convictions with integrity. In confessing to his own fears, frustrations, and missteps, Goodman became more than the character he played. He became a mirror, reflecting both the light and shadow of a life devoted to storytelling. By sharing this reflection publicly, Goodman offered a lesson in resilience. Endings can be bitter, but they can also illuminate what was never visible before. The show may have ended, but the truths it carried, about family, loyalty, and human imperfection, endured, carried forward in Goodman's voice, steady and sincere, ready to guide the next chapter. When The Connors premiered in October 2018, it carried with it the weight of a family that audiences had loved for decades, and the absence of the woman who had made it famous. For John Goodman, walking back onto the familiar set was a journey through memory, loss, and quiet triumph. The couch where Dan had sat for years now held a slightly different story, one shaped by absence yet guided by resilience. Goodman had learned that endings do not erase impact. Every scene, every laugh, every argument captured in the original series had left a trace, in him, in the audience, in television history. Even without Roseanne Barr, the family they built remained alive. Audiences returned, and the show's premiere drew millions once again. A testament to the enduring power of characters rooted in honesty and humanity. It proved that storytelling, when authentic survives beyond circumstance. The transition was not seamless. Goodman described moments of disorientation on set, the familiarity of the family clashing with the reality that the past could not simply repeat itself. Yet in that disorientation lay growth. He witnessed co-stars stepping into new roles, scripts being reshaped, and a creative team finding its way without the original star. Through it all, Goodman remained the anchor, the constant reminder of what the Connors had always represented: love, resilience, and the struggle to stay true amid chaos. Reflecting on the journey, Goodman acknowledged that the legacy of Roseanne was more than laughter and ratings. It was the way the Connors mirrored working-class America, showing audiences that ordinary lives were worthy of attention and respect. He saw that the impact went far beyond television. It had shaped how people perceived family, work, and the quiet heroism in everyday survival. For Goodman, the lessons extended to life itself. Loyalty matters, truth matters, and even flawed people can leave a lasting imprint. The experience also gave Goodman perspective on forgiveness and personal growth. He had faced the fallout, the depression, and the public scrutiny. Yet through reflection he discovered clarity. Forgiving, he realized, was not about erasing hurt. It was about honoring what had been built, even if the circumstances changed. The Connors became a vessel for that lesson. The show could continue, life could move forward, and the essence of what they had created together remained intact. Audiences too responded. They returned not for scandal or spectacle, but for the sincerity of the Connor family, for the warmth of a father who could laugh and ache in equal measure. Goodman's performance carried both history and humanity, blending nostalgia with reflection. Viewers felt the truth beneath the scripted lines, that life is messy, love is imperfect, and resilience requires daily courage. Through it all, Goodman embodied both the Connors' humor and their heart. The laughter remained, but it was now layered with reflection. The show had survived absence, scandal, and reinvention, proving that legacy is never solely about continuation. It is about endurance, integrity, and the quiet power of love that persists even when the world changes. For Goodman, that was the truth he carried forward. Endings may come, but what was lived and loved remains. Looking back, John Goodman's journey with Roseanne and the Connors is more than the story of a television show. It is a reflection on loyalty, resilience, and the cost of truth. He stood beside a friend and colleague through triumph and turmoil, laughter and heartbreak, learning that even the strongest bonds can face moments of fracture. The cancellations, the controversies, and the sudden silences did not erase the work, nor the memories, nor the love shared on set. For Goodman, the experience became a lesson in endurance, understanding that endings are never simple, that loss can be transformative, and that forgiveness is a practice, not a destination. Through reflection and honesty, he carried forward both the lessons of the past and the quiet pride of what he helped create. The Connors endured, not just as characters on a screen, but as symbols of ordinary lives lived with courage, compassion, and humor. Even now, he walks the line between memory and legacy, between grief and gratitude, knowing that what was built remains alive in every laugh, every story, and every heart it touched. And in that truth, the journey finds its meaning, its redemption, and its quiet triumph. For more emotional stories, check out this video.